Hi, I'm Lucas,
And I'm Brian.
and this is the Quacks Podcast. Hey guys, Lucas here with the Quacks Podcast, episode 38. Welcome to the podcast. This week we have a special guest. His name is Lucas Aoun, and he owns a supplement company in Australia. We talk about some really awesome things in this podcast, but before we jump into that, I just want to explain one thing. Now, Lucas and I come from different backgrounds in health and supplements. He is young, fit, and he's a very healthy guy. So he comes at supplementation with the mindset of performance and optimization. I come from more of a chronic illness background, and so I see things from that light. Now, I find that on the web, usually you kind of fall into one of these two camps. There are people trying to fix a problem and people attempting to get an edge. And Lucas, in my opinion, definitely falls into the latter camp, which is great to have that different kind of perspective on these topics. And it's why we do these interviews and why they can bring so much value to all the listeners. Now, some of his recommendations are out there compared to what we normally talk about. We talk about BPC 157, which is an experimental peptide people are using for joint issues, as well as some other racy topics. So just keep in mind that context matters in a different way for different people, and enjoy this wonderful interview. Hey everybody, how's it going? I am here with Lucas Aoun. He is the CEO and founder of Ergogenic Health. He's also the lead formulator and developer of BrainX, which is a new supplement on the market that I think we're going to talk about towards the end for boosting dopamine. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you making some time.
Yeah, cheers, man. Cheers. Yeah, I'm really stoked to be here and sort of leverage my knowledge to your audience and just expand on topics that are relatively unexplored in that sense.
Yeah, it seems like people are really interested in neurotransmitters. You know, we've done a couple episodes. We did one on dopamine. We did one on serotonin, and people really like the whole idea, the subjective experience of it. And so I thought when I saw some of your posts on a forum we both visit, I thought, we should get this guy on just to kind of talk a little bit about what he knows.
Yeah. I mean, I've been researching neurotransmitters for well over 7 years, and I was just always fascinated by ways in which we can optimize brain function. So I remember back when I was in high school, my very first experience with a quote unquote nootropic was it was actually a chewing gum which was called Think Gum. And
Really?
Yeah, and I remember using that around exam periods and noticing just a mild boost, and all my friends around me man, what are you doing? This is not going to have any effect, and just constantly just critiquing my experiments. But yeah, from there I sort of branched off and was always researching things on PubMed and just constantly experimenting and tracking.
Yeah, so you're a naturopath, if I'm correct. Could you tell us maybe a little bit how you got into that, what your path was to get a practice and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I am still completing my degree. I'm third year student, and will be graduated end of next year. But I sort of just transitioned into that from my exercise science degree, which I did a year of, and then I was lucky enough to sort of get involved in a startup back then, and that was basically a nootropic product, which I helped to formulate back then.
Okay.
And yeah, and then sort of just transitioned over into my naturopathy degree, and just loving every little bit of it and just absolutely devouring it. I'm just, it's really easy for me because I was already living that sort of lifestyle. So, I noticed that things just worked, things just flowed, and I just really enjoyed being in an environment where people sort of view the body in a similar way.
Yeah. So how did you get into neurotransmitters?
I guess that would have been from, I played professional soccer for 15 years, and I was experimenting with L-CAR, acetyl-L-carnitine.
Oh, okay.
The traditional, mitochondrial enhancer. So I played around with L-CAR, noticed that it had a pretty positive effect on my like reaction time and my decision making on the soccer pitch. And then it sort of branched off into like, okay, well, I'm improving my performance on the soccer field. How can I alter some other area of my lifestyle? And then I sort of experimented with L-theanine, and I remember my very first experience with that. It was really profound. I was very, I think I was 200 milligrams of theanine, and then like an hour later, I was about 19. About an hour later, I noticed just insane calmness and just really, really relaxed. And just from there, I was like just constantly on Reddit, always contributing some really cool like PubMed articles and just sharing very novel research on just like standard things like magnesium, zinc. But yeah, I again, like you said before, I just don't feel like we have a really good grasp on neurotransmitter function, and obviously that serotonin episode that you did, I guess a lot of people are still very unsure about serotonin's role in mood and motivation, things like that.
Yeah, I know it's often mistaken for that, happy hormone. And it's weird because it's not, we talked a little bit about Ray Peat on the show, who is really like anti-serotonin. And I understand why he is, but there are some people who have been really helped by antidepressants. It does seem to kind of turn a light off or on in their head that relieves a lot of their depression. And I hear you on L-theanine. I used L-theanine, I think, for years when I was a coffee drinker. It's just fantastic stuff. And the thing I like about L-theanine is there's very little downside to taking it for long periods of time. At least I never experienced one. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I never really noticed any sort of dependency or tolerance for that matter. Like I just found it was very consistent, and just always seemed to get me in that sweet spot of like focused and relaxed at the same time.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about dopamine, which I know you are particularly interested in with BrainX and all that. So what got you interested in dopamine, and why is it important to you? What is it about it that kind of grabs you?
Yeah, I think would have been just from years of experimentation and sort of finding the common link between all the substances and compounds that I was playing around with. And I quickly came to realize that anything that would assist or optimize dopamine signaling or dopamine receptors would have a positive effect on whatever outcome I was trying to explore. So, for example, like, I mean, I'm still a student, and I'm very, very driven and very, very like motivated. And I found that like things that would support dopamine synthesis would really, as you mentioned, it's very propelling, and it's very sort of, it just keeps me focused, like very, very focused. But having said that, there is definitely a trade-off, and
Yeah.
that can come at the cost of sort of being, I guess, a little bit too selfish and too self-oriented with your own goals, because you're so focused, you sort of lose perspective on like what it actually means to be a human. Like,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, like you just sort of, like I found myself, because I monitor how I feel all the time, I actually realized that when my dopamine's really, really high, I'm super focused, super motivated, but my fulfillment and happiness is, I wouldn't say at its peak. Whereas let's just say I've had a really great day, I've hung out with friends and been to like a social event and really connected with other people. My score, my happiness rating, whatever you want to call it, is a lot higher. Like I feel really valued, and I just really get that really nice, warm, cozy feeling. Like you just feel really like connected.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I know one of the things we talked about was dopamine is that thing that propels you towards goals. And it's not necessarily the payoff once you get to the goal. It's not necessarily the good, nice feelings. And so when you take things that up dopamine, it does definitely put you, it gets you moving, it gets you propelled in a certain direction. But if your brain is just always high on dopamine, you actually don't get that payoff. You don't ever arrive, so to speak. And I don't know what brain chemicals would be used with bonding. Probably like oxytocin or something along those lines.
Yeah, even I'm not sure how much you've experienced or like researched, like how the opioid network intertwines with the dopamine system as well, because that payoff that you're referring to, that reinforcing aspect of getting that reward, like I'm not entirely sure, but I know that the opioid network is highly linked there to that reinforcing and that reward that you get from those behaviors. So I wonder if
do you what about the other neurotransmitters like glutamate, GABA, norepinephrine? Do you know much about those and how they kind of affect people?
I know a little bit about glutamate and GABA. So, well, in terms of glutamate, it is the most it's the main excitatory neurotransmitter in the body.
Okay.
And I think it's the most abundant as well. So it definitely plays a huge role in cognitive function and things like memory, learning, and other brain functions. But I've seen a lot of research indicating that there's higher blood levels of glutamate in autistic children and people, which is quite fascinating.
That is interesting.
And also, it's pretty rare to see someone like if you were to break down glutamate and its associated behaviors and traits, it's pretty rare to see someone lacking glutamate. Like I don't really see many people striving to want to raise their glutamate levels because that can be excitotoxic, and I think the brain is quite good at regulating and having enough glutamate.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I don't think. I mean, there's a few nootropics that can modulate glutamate, and I think the number one nootropic for that is Nupept.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, that's a Russian peptide, and I think that definitely does ramp up glutamate production, and that's probably how it influences memory processing because it influences like long-term potentiation. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Usually with glutamate, what I find is, obviously you eat things with MSG in them, which is monosodium glutamate. I always find I get kind of a headache. I definitely get more focused, but I get kind of compulsive almost, or basically I feel ADHD. Like my attention can't stay on many things that long. And underneath that is kind of like a pain in my head, like kind of a fist, like squeezing. And so that's what I've always associated with glutamate. But obviously MSG is not probably the best form of glutamate, or, you probably wouldn't want to take that to raise it. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly how because I know glutamate, it is being studied in connection with certain neurodegenerative processes and stuff. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, obviously there's an enzyme, the glutamic acid decarboxylase, which is that enzyme that shunts the glutamate back into GABA. And there's a ton of ways in which we can modify that enzyme. And one of them that we mentioned earlier was theanine, but then also you've got another constituent from a herb called Evodia, that's gastrodin. that's one that's quite effective at regulating that enzyme. Holy basil, lemon balm, and even the good old taurine, which I absolutely love.
So taurine, that's an amino acid, but these herbs and amino acid will basically make your brain convert glutamate to GABA. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, and what is GABA? How does that work?
So GABA is our primary inhibitory or calming neurotransmitter, and that the way I like to look at it is similar to Chris Master John, and he says that it's sort of like the brake pedal on the brain. It just sort of slows things down, similar to how people feel when they drink alcohol, because that obviously modifies GABA. Well, that binds to the GABA A receptors, and clearly that's not a long-term solution to sort of optimizing GABA levels. But basically, GABA is a very sort of anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, and it works well in conjunction with high dopamine, because you've got that strong focus and motivation, but then you've also got like that brake pedal to sort of slow you down, keep you on track, reduce ADHD symptoms, reduce norepinephrine, so you get a reduction in anxiety. And I'm sure it also links to the vagus nerve. And I haven't exactly seen any research suggesting this, but I believe that oral GABA supplementation will somehow influence the vagus nerve through the gut, because
interesting.
A lot of people are, they're saying that GABA supplementation does not cross the blood-brain barrier.
Okay.
But if it doesn't, and it's having an anxiolytic effect, then let's have a think about where it's working. So there's a lot more GABA receptors in the gut than the brain. So it sort of makes sense that it's having a positive effect on anxiety through the gut.
So that's interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of, I know in the kind of here, I mean, obviously you're in Australia, so it's probably different, but here in health food stores, a lot of people talk about the connection between the gut and the brain. And, we kind of mentioned it in the serotonin episode. I think 90% of your serotonin is found in your gut versus your brain. So that's pretty interesting. What about norepinephrine? Do you know how that ties into all this? Because isn't that adrenaline, basically?
Yeah, I guess. Well, norepinephrine is one of the metabolic byproducts of enhancing dopamine. So that enzyme which converts dopamine into norepinephrine is that dopamine beta hydroxylase enzyme. And if we have an excess of norepinephrine, it can exacerbate ADHD symptoms. It can increase arousal too much, like that inverted U arousal scale on that can influence that. And I wonder, I haven't seen much research about it influencing like blood pressure or having a sort of vasoconstrictive nature to it. So I wonder if that would affect, athletes in the gym, for like, pumps in the gym, things like that.
Yeah.
There is a way to inhibit that enzyme, that dopamine beta hydroxylase enzyme, and it's actually from another sort of amino acid. Well, it's actually a dipeptide, L-carnosine.
Okay.
That's a pretty well-known dopamine beta hydroxylase inhibitor. I did a post on that on Reddit a couple of years back, and that's quite effective for people who like to use a lot of stimulants, but then they don't want to channel all that dopamine into norepinephrine.
Why would one want to inhibit that conversion?
Well, I guess because when you're getting too much conversion into norepinephrine, it's going to worsen anxiety. It'll increase sort of like fidgetiness, sort of restlessness.
Okay.
Again, probably like too aroused. But again, in the gym, that may be a good thing. I mean, you can probably afford to be ADHD in the gym because,
So I'm kind of curious. Do you see clients or do you work with people who come to you for problems with their depression or whatnot?
Well, at the moment, I'm not taking on any clients yet. I do plan on doing like nootropic consultations a couple of years down the track, but at the moment, I'm just sort of um, I'm sort of helping athletes with their sort of nutrition, recovery, lifestyle hacks, things that can improve their performance. So um, it's definitely a space I really look forward to getting into. And I just feel like I've got so much knowledge across so many areas, not just the brain, but also like hormonal health, particularly men's hormones, sleep hacks, just, modifying other systems. I feel like I've got a lot of research and experience in that area, and I just can't wait to sort of,
Cool.
work privately with clients.
So why don't we go through a few of those? So you mentioned sleep and men's health. What if somebody came to you with sleep problems, or a guy comes to you with low testosterone or whatnot, what would your approach be?
Yeah, well, actually, one of my practices has sort of not gone viral, but one of them was sort of educating men on the benefits of icing their gonads. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, this took off. I got interviewed on one of our radio stations here in Melbourne one morning, like a couple of years back. And since then, I created my own sort of Facebook group dedicated to that practice called Sub-Zero. Um,
All right. I'll try it. Whatever. Well, I'm down. So what can somebody expect from icing their balls?
well, initially, from my experience and experiments was so I first started doing it on my way to the gym, like just in the car. I'd chuck an ice pack down there, and yeah, I just felt like as soon as I took it off, I just got this really really high charging energy. I just felt really super energized, like similar to an ice bath, but it just sort of felt like more channeled
So
and just very.
so are you saying you did it on accident the first time? Like you just put an ice pack in your like I don't know, crotch or whatever just to keep it there, and then you're like, aha, it's like, is that what you're saying? Like it was like Newton with an apple hitting his head, or did you like figure this out or research it or something?
I did come across I found a research study showing nocturnal scrotum cooling having a seriously positive effect on sperm count and testosterone levels. And I was like, okay, well, I've got to give this a crack. Like, what's all the hype about? Did some more research, found a few on a few bodybuilding forums, a few guys that would use it, and they would say like, the Russian and Chinese powerlifters swore by it, and they used to do it before their lifts. So I gave it a crack, and I know a lot of it would have been placebo, but I definitely enjoyed how I felt after doing it. And also doing it before bed would just reliably, morning wood guaranteed, like without even if, you're under a lot of stress, a lot of variables are working against you. I just felt like it was having a consistent effect in that regard. And a lot of other guys in the group, in the Sub-Zero group, have just left heaps of comments and just, reporting their experiences and saying how much of a positive effect it's having on their sex drive.
Wow.
Just their general energy levels. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great free little biohack that I can't wait to sort of, not announce publicly, but just sort of, get more guys onto it. Because, I mean, look at the sperm count today. Like, we are just,
Yeah.
it's really scary. Like, it's a very, very downward trend.
Yeah, and the testosterone levels, I know that the range just keeps getting moved lower and lower and lower. So what is it actually doing, when you put ice on your balls? How does that work?
Well, part of its mechanism would be the fact that we as men today, our testicles are just too warm majority of the time. Like even if it's 2 degrees above like the normal level, spermatogenesis is complete. Like it completely arrests spermatogenesis. So like you cannot produce sperm if they're just 2 degrees too hot, and that sort of makes sense. Like you sort of use a sauna. That's like always bring an ice pack in the sauna. That is an absolute must for any guy. But yeah, part of that mechanism would be just purely like temperature regulation, and also Leydig cell function. So like its ability to secrete luteinizing hormone and testosterone. So it's having a pretty powerful effect in that regard. But then also, I have a feeling it would be working on like mitochondrial function down there,
Okay.
like in some regard, because not that there's any brown fat in that area, but I believe the combination of temperature, like temperature regulation, modifying blood flow there, I'm sure that would have another effect, like that vasoconstrictive nature. Then once you take the ice pack off, you get that blood rush back down there, and then sort of brings you know fresh blood. But I mean, again, all we can go by is some of the research studies on like sperm count. It's having such a dramatic effect, and some of the people that I've worked with in the past, they've prescribed it, or they've told their husband to start icing, and like 2 out of 2, they successfully got pregnant from doing that. So
Oh, wow.
Watch out, man. Watch out.
Okay, so you heard it here first. Fertility problems, ice your balls. That's great. How long should they do it? Like what, and is it better to use an ice pack, or do you want to go with ice itself in a bag? What are the details?
Well, I mean, I am now affiliated with a company called Snowballs.
No. Really?
Yeah,
All right.
they sell sort of underwear that have like little inserts for the ice pack sort of thing. So it sort of makes it nice and convenient, easy for you to ice sort of at home. But you can simply just use a regular ice pack, or sort of like a Ziploc bag with 2 ice cubes. And then the trick is obviously do not apply it directly to the skin, because that is a surefire way to sort of, burn the skin on your balls.
All right.
Yeah, just make sure it's sort of just placing it up against your underwear, just keeping that area cool. Doesn't have to be like frozen, just needs to be cool.
How long?
Yeah. I usually do like 15 to 20 minutes. And I'll do that every now and then. Like I might do it on my way to the gym. And then I'll do another one before bed as well. So probably like twice a day.
All right. Are you a big fan of the cryotherapy where people, freeze their whole body or whatnot for short amounts of time?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm a big fan of cryotherapy. I do think, though, it can be, it is an acute stressor, and it does massively upregulate that production of norepinephrine. So if it's, say, like 5:30 p.m. and I've been working all day and I sort of need like another kick, another little boost, I'll just go upstairs, have a cold shower, come back down, and I'll get another about 90 minutes of alertness and focus sort of thing. There's a ton of other benefits. I did a post on my Instagram specifically on cold water immersion and the benefits of that, so people can check that out if they're interested.
Cool.
In learning more.
So what about sleep? You mentioned sleep, and you might have some hacks for that.
Yeah, actually, there's a particular seaweed which I can't wait to sort of share with my audience, which I haven't yet, but you'll be the first on this podcast. It's a brown seaweed from Japan, and that's called Eclonia cava, and that has so much research I think they spent over $33 million researching this particular seaweed for a wide range of health conditions. And basically, I've come to realize that it's one of the most effective sleep aids because it's a positive allosteric modulator of that GABA A receptor.
Okay.
So it's very anxiolytic. It also mimics L-theanine in the sense that it also raises alpha waves in the brain, which is awesome because there's not many other nootropics that can really influence that alpha wave state. And for those who are unsure on like what that even means, it's basically think of it as how you feel after meditation. Like that's if you were to meditate for 20 minutes, and that feeling that you sort of get immediately after it, that's similar to how it feels to raise alpha waves. So Iclonia cava is quite good at that. And it also powerfully lowers cortisol as well.
So kind of like a deep calm.
Yeah, it's really good in that sense.
Is it sold? I mean, can you buy it on Amazon, or where do people get it if they wanted to try it?
Well, the one that I went through a few different vendors, and two of them had zero effect on me, like nothing at all. And then I found one that was quite effective. So I've listed that one on my website, which people can find. We can put in the show notes.
I'll put a show note link in there.
Yeah, and the other thing is that Iclonia cava, there was a study done against Viagra, and it outperformed Viagra in terms of its
really
effect on endothelial function, because it really, really supports endothelial function, and also that nitrate to nitrite ratio. So like it really scavenges the toxic peroxynitrate. So it has a really positive effect on blood flow, but not in a very toxic manner like citrulline or arginine sort of thing.
Okay.
It's also a very, very powerful ACE inhibitor.
Okay, so it might lower your blood pressure a little bit.
Yeah. And also it's got a lot of research on it's well known for its antioxidant capacity, because it's got some of the fluorotannins found in Iclonia cava, they're actually fat soluble, so they stick around in the body and have a really long. So they have like a 12-hour half-life. So you get that antioxidant protection, which again can be good, but then can be problematic. Obviously, with adaptations to weight training, things like that.
Yeah, is this something you'd want to take every night, or you would want to take it occasionally?
Yeah, I mean, I use it probably like 3 or 4 times a week. About 1 hour before bed, sort of, or after dinner, with some nuts or almonds or something. And like I noticed this, and so did my dad who tried it. It's when you wake up, you feel like you really just can't fall back asleep. Like you just feel like you've woken up like really ready to go. You just feel really, really deeply rested. And I do track my sleep with the Aura ring.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, so I do have some objective data to combine that with my subjective feelings, and I haven't seen amazing increases in my deep sleep. I may have seen like a slight increase in my REM, like maybe like 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
My deep sleep usually floats around the 2-hour mark. The highest I ever got was 3 hours and 15 minutes of deep sleep. And that was from BPC 157.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay, well that's a gastric peptide. So it stands for body protecting compound. Basically, it's used to sort of heal the gut from sort of like NSAID induced gastric ulcers.
Oh, is this the one people are using for joints?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, gotcha. And it's kind of an experimental thing, right? They have to inject it.
I mean, the one that I have is oral. Like, there's a company here that sells oral BPC 157.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, obviously, I was hesitant to be injecting, peptide. I'm not experienced with that, so wanted to avoid the injection pathway. So, but orally, it's bioactive because I mean, if it's made in the gut, it makes sense that it's still bioavailable through an oral capsule breaking down in the gut. Um, but yeah, it's that had a really dramatic effect on my deep sleep. Like I said, 3 hours and 15 minutes, and I believe that's because that has a very, very potent effect on regulating GABA, because there's people that have said that BPC 157 has sort of restored their tolerance to diazepam and some other benzodiazepines, which is pretty profound, I guess.
Yeah, so maybe explain that a little bit deeper.
Well, so basically, as with most medications, not all, they are really the body adapts to anything you introduce by sort of either down regulating the receptors or changing its response to that drug. So basically, when people use benzodiazepines, which are anxiolytic, let's say they reduce anxiety or they promote sleep through that GABAergic, that GABA A receptor, um, over time, if they continuously use that, they end up severely downregulating their GABA A receptors, and as a result, they need more of that drug to get the same sort of effect. So that's a typical example of tolerance. And there have been a lot of people online who have used benzodiazepines for years, and after using BPC 157 for a week or so, have reported that their tolerance and adaptability and the strength of their benzodiazepine has come back to full strength, like to as they first started. So I found that pretty interesting. And again, we don't really know exactly where that's working, if it is in the gut, or if it's in the brain. But we definitely do know that it does modulate a wide range of neurotransmitters and receptor sites as well. So found that pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
that is really interesting.
Yeah, it's just been it's again, Ben Greenfield talks about it quite a lot, from a like performance perspective. And I've got my PubMed notifications turned on for this peptide because I'm seeing research studies come in like every week or so, and it's just a wide range of things. It's healing. Like the reason why I grabbed it was because I had a torn medial meniscus, my knee,
Okay.
and within a week or two, like I was fully functional. Like I could squat like all the way down, didn't have any pain,
Wow.
and this is something that I've had for years because I played soccer for 15 years, and this really did seal the damage. It's pretty potent in that regard. It's a very healing peptide.
Yeah, do you still take it or did you just take it for a short amount of time?
I just used it for those 2 weeks, and as a result, my knee fixed. My deep sleep was insane, and my tolerance to allergenic and really like bad foods was improved. Like my digestive capacity was strengthened quite a lot. Reduced like bloating from foods that should cause bloating. And the stools were like type 4 on the Bristol stool chart, like every single time. So
How much did you take?
I was using 500 micrograms orally, just once a day. Even that's a pretty moderate dose. You could probably get away with less, to be honest.
Okay.
So it's a cool peptide. And again, I'm excited to see more research in the future.
Okay, cool. So before we move on to Brain X, are there any other little life hacks or whatnot that have really made a big difference for you?
Yeah, actually, going back to the sleep, mouth. So mouth taping has had a pretty positive effect on my sleep
And
scores.
how does that work?
Well, part of it would be because, first of all, I was a mouth breather. I wasn't aware of that, but I was breathing through my mouth during my sleep. And that in itself, like just breathing through the mouth, is a good way to activate that sympathetic nervous system, so that like the fight or flight nervous system. And that's definitely not something you want to be activating, or at least, encouraging while you sleep. So if you shift over back to the nose, like nasal breathing, and that's why, there's a lot of yogis that have those like breathing methods through the nose. Shifting it back towards the nasal cavity really switches the autonomic nervous system towards the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's having a positive effect on, the vagus nerve, and then again, probably lowering cortisol, lowering adrenaline during your sleep. And then it also regulates nitric oxide, because you create, majority of the nitric oxide is actually formed in the nose.
Okay.
So that again is advantageous during sleep, because it's going to help with blood flow and lymphatic drainage and things like that.
All right. So basically, you tape your mouth shut before you go to bed.
Basically, yeah. I mean, you're making yourself a hostage before you sleep. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Any other life hacks?
Gratitude. Gratitude is a big one. Just expressing gratitude throughout the day. Just being grateful for, reminding yourself on the things that you're grateful for. Like that has a really profound impact on like my mood state, and just making me feel, just grateful for the things that are around me. Because sometimes we're so narrow focused on things that we just lose perspective on. There are people out there that are suffering a lot more than you.
Yeah.
So it's something really important to keep track of. And and ask your friends. Just ask them on a daily basis or whatever, and just be like, what are you grateful for today? It'll might shock them, sort of thing. Just be like, oh, I haven't really thought of that, sort of thing. So
Yeah, that's cool. Have a little community of people that you're all always kind of reminding each other to be grateful for something.
yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about Brain X. That's a new supplement that you just recently came out with, and I believe it has something like 4 ingredients in it. So can you tell us how you came up with it and what the ingredients are?
Yeah, sure. So BrainX was a product that I've been working on for well over 2 years. And I mean, the original name for it was Coffee Boost. So it was basically a formula that was designed to be added to your coffee to give you more energy, focus, and sort of reduce the crash from the coffee itself. And so basically, as you mentioned, there's 4 ingredients. I'll take it from the top. So first off, we have catwaba. So catwaba bark, also known as Trichilia catiga. And that's a herb from Brazil, which has a lot of historical use for its effect on as a nerve tonic, sort of uplifting mood, acting as a mild aphrodisiac, a very sort of like a social herb. And if we dive into sort of the mechanism behind how that's sort of working, it has a very strong affinity towards the dopaminergic system, and it acts as a very mild dopamine reuptake inhibitor.
Okay.
And also I don't think it's very strong in this department, but it can also support, serotonin release as well. But the dopamine reuptake inhibition is nothing like, amphetamines. It's very mild, but it sort of feels like it has reverse tolerance, because the more you use it, the better the effects, sort of thing. Like it has a lot of people online, and there's no research on this, but people reporting that it has sort of reverse tolerance, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting because dopamine. I mean, it just the more you take, the more you need. So I mean, that's really fascinating.
And another study that I found was that it actually has slight opioid activity as well, um, because they did a study. There's a particular way they can assess pain tolerance in rats. I know this is really cruel, but basically it's the hot plate test. Have you?
I'm not familiar with the hot plate test.
Um, it's pretty cruel. I mean, they basically assess how long a rat can withstand pain on the hot plate. Assessing it's sort of the analgesic effects of certain medications or drugs.
So basically, they have a rat on a hot plate and they slowly heat it and see at what point they start to freak out.
Yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
pretty much. And I know the dose was quite high, but they did compare Catawba to morphine, and it was somewhat equal, and if not better than morphine at increasing a rat's tolerance to the hot plate, which is pretty cool. But like the way I view Catawba is that it's a very uplifting herb. It's very makes you feel very uninhibited. Like you feel very like just present, very like sort of sarcastic, less serious. Sort of turns you into a bit of a joker. Like that was when I first started using it a few years ago. Like I was experimenting with it before, going out to a party or whatever. And I found that I felt super confident, super like outgoing, a lot more sarcastic, which I found like usually I'm very like focused and, get shit done sort of thing. But this sort of made me feel sort of come out of my shell, really, really sort of showed my true personality.
Yeah, the Joker, playful. I get it.
Yeah. And for the people that I've, because I did some small testing on the actual formula, and a lot of people sort of said similar things about like how it sort of made them feel. Some people said that it had a positive effect on like musical appreciation, which is really cool. But basically, yeah. So the Catawba that's my chief ingredient. Then I've combined that with Miraprima, which is another herb from Brazil. And if you look traditionally, they have always used those two together. And Miraprima has a very unique mechanism of action. It strengthens nerve growth factor, similar to lion's mane, which is a mushroom that everyone's talking about.
Yeah, that is
at the
super
moment,
popular right now.
which definitely does come with a ton of side effects. And
What kind of side effects?
a lion's mane is a potent DHT blocker, so that's having a lot of guys, including myself, notice lowered libido from using lion's mane long term, similar to finasteride.
Oh, wow. So yeah, DHT is that testosterone metabolite that is, very masculinizing.
Yeah, I mean it's 3 to 10 times stronger than testosterone itself, and a lot of the positive effects of high testosterone actually come from its conversion into that DHT. So lion's mane in that regard it's not bad. I'm not here to dig at lion's mane, but Miraprima, it doesn't really have that DHT blocking effect, and it acts as a very mild GABA A antagonist. So it's actually blocking GABA A slightly, which
It's kind of like an upper.
yeah, definitely an upper. And then it also has like dopamine D1 receptor agonism, and that has a role in influencing alertness and focus. So yeah, traditionally they have always been used together, and then I've combined those two with another ingredient called uridine monophosphate. You familiar with that one?
I'm not. I mean, I've heard about it, but I don't know much about what it does.
Okay, cool. Well, uridine has a very, very positive effect on sort of dopamine receptor density in regions of the brain that are responsible for like alertness, focus, motivation, things like that. And what they've actually researched is that uridine combined with stimulants such as they have used cocaine and amphetamines in the studies is that it potentiates the locomotive effects of those drugs, which shows that it actually may sort of have again make someone more sensitive to stimulants. So whether or not that applies to coffee, I'm not sure, but from anecdotal evidence, it's definitely agreed upon that uridine combined with coffee makes the coffee feel subjectively a lot stronger.
Interesting. So this is really like something that makes the supplement feel even stronger than it really is. It's like a sensitizer.
Exactly right. And it also, that also massively increases neurite outgrowth. So increasing like your ability to form connections, and then
Within
also,
your brain?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because it's again working through that nerve growth factor signaling, and then it also increases phospholipids. Um, so things like phosphatidylcholine in the brain, which is critical for memory and just cellular fluidity and you know um, plasticity. So uridine is one of those compounds that, for me, the reason why I put in Brain X was because one, it's going to strengthen the effects of the coffee or make them more sensitive to catwaba and miraprama, and it also has highly neuroprotective properties. So I know that it's very well researched for like delaying Alzheimer's and supporting cognition long term. Um, and then I also put in there
Real
because
quick before, is there a natural source of uridine? I mean, where does it come from?
okay, so it's found from. I mean, it can be found in like broccoli, brewer's yeast, foods like that, but they are actually not bioavailable. So for some reason the body doesn't really, it's not very bioavailable from these foods. You'd have to eat quite a lot. The only food that does reliably raise blood levels of uridine is breast milk, but I'm not sure how many people have access to that.
Wow, that puts a whole new light on the new Mad Max movie, right? Cool. Okay, so what's the fourth ingredient?
The fourth and final one is D-ribose. Now, D-ribose is a naturally occurring sugar, which can. The reason why I put it in the formula was because it actually reduces the perceived crash from caffeine because it regulates like intracellular calcium influx and also adenosine activity. So what it does is it actually, there's a research study on PubMed sort of demonstrating the effect of D-ribose in conjunction with caffeine. And what they found was that it reduces the perceived crash from caffeine whilst maintaining the energizing effects, because it also supports the synthesis of ATP in the body. Um, so again, D-ribose, I'm very proud that it's in there because it's acting as my filler. And there's all these companies putting all these nasty fillers and flavors and things like that, but
Yeah, all the sand and junk.
D-ribose is my sweetener because if you taste it on its own, it is very sweet, and it's a sugar, but it's a sugar that actually lowers blood sugar levels. It's really weird in that regard. It doesn't spike your blood sugar levels. Um, so the keto fans will be happy about that one.
Yeah. So to kind of sum this all up, basically, if somebody takes Brain X, they're going to feel uh, uninhibited, more social, easier to talk. They're going to be more focused, more present in the moment, calmer, and they're not going to have some of the downsides that maybe lion's mane or amphetamines would have. Is that kind of an accurate summation?
Yeah, pretty much, man. That were my key objectives, and it took a lot of refining for the dosages, but I've really landed on what I think is an absolute winner, and I feel like people are just going to fall in love with the formula. They're just going to love how they feel like every day. I'm so confident in saying that because I've seen people. I've already prepared samples for friends and stuff, and they really enjoy the effects, and it's just a happy blend, and it really does make you your best version of yourself. Like, I'm very confident in saying that.
Who is it? I'm sorry. Who would it be for? Is it for everybody? Is it for only certain people?
I guess it's most suitable to people who are under a lot of stress, have a busy lifestyle, find themselves getting fatigued in the afternoon. Athletes can use it. Corporate workers, entrepreneurs.
So pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
Are there any drawbacks? Anything people should watch out for?
The only major drawback that I'm fully aware of is that because there's uridine in the formula, it may deplete B6, B9, and B12. So I'm going to make a very conscious effort to remind people to either supplement also with like a B complex, or just make sure they're getting enough of these nutrients through the diet.
Okay.
Because uridine does tend to deplete those nutrients. And the other side effect would be, if people are having too much, if they're having 2 sachets a day, they might feel a little bit restless and a little bit irritable. But other than that, I don't really see, there's no other, again, maybe hypoglycemia from the D-ribose. Okay. But apart from that, they're all it's very well researched, and it's very safe. Traditionally, in Brazil, if you go to Brazil and talk about either one of those herbs, everyone will just laugh and just say, yeah, we love these,
Nice. That's awesome. So how can people get it?
So currently we are just getting pre-orders. Only just received my first round of investment like 5 weeks ago. So I'm literally starting from the ground zero. But basically people can just go to brainx.me, and they can pre-order now. And for those early adopters, they will receive 50% off their second box. So with this promotion, we're just breaking even. It's not a cheap formula to produce, because sourcing the ingredients is quite difficult. Like the herbs are quite difficult, and the quality of the catuaba and mirapuama is very good compared to some of the other vendors that I've used in the past. So people can sign up on brainx.me, and once we hit 1,000 sort of pre-orders, then we'll be starting our first manufacturing run. So about a third of the way there now. So yeah, getting
nice.
there.
Very nice. Is it? Do you guys ship internationally?
We aim to ship internationally. None of the ingredients are considered illegal anywhere. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, that's kind of all the questions I've got. Is there anything else you want to talk about or mention?
Not really.
Well, thanks so much, dude. I really appreciate you giving us the time, and I'll put the links for Brain X and some of the other stuff we talked about in the show notes. But thanks so much for being here.
No worries, man. No, I really enjoyed it.
So great stuff there from Lucas. For anybody who is curious about some of the stuff we talked about, we covered a wide range of topics. There will be show notes for the BPC 157 that he mentioned, the brown seaweed, Brain X snowballs, and some other interesting articles. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Be well.